and welcome back to Ask the Unfaithful. Today's a special day. I get to always film with James, but today we are filming our 50th episode of Ask the Unfaithful. If you can't see me because you're watching through Spotify or Apple, I wore a nice shirt and tie today. I thought it was a big, exciting moment, but I also caught James off guard. We are overjoyed to be filming our 50th episode. Quite the accomplishment, my good brother James.
I think we can be proud of this. It really is. Who knew, man, when we started out? I mean, you were talking about, if I recall, when we're in our thousands, and I'm going, okay, let's try
Yeah.
10. But here we are at 50. Pretty awesome. So
And
thank
so, there's a saying, whether you come from faith or you're agnostic or everything in between, but I can't remember who it was, but I do know that there's a comment that goes like this. We fall into our destiny and calling more than we walk into it. And so, for those of you that are watching or listening and you can't see my beautiful tie that I'm quite proud of, on behalf of James and I, we want to tell you, especially the unfaithful, you may not know where you're going or what you're doing. You might be trying really hard and just wondering, can God or the universe, fate, karma, ever do anything with me productive or meaningful again? And on behalf of James and I, absolutely, you have no idea what could be in store for you. And if God, fate, the universe, karma can use two screw ups like us to reach all over the country, and I will tell you, I had a few minutes before our meeting on YouTube alone, James, we have had over 222,000 views. That's just on YouTube. That is not Spotify or Apple. And those are counted views. Those are not just assumptions and glossing over. Those are counted views. So, buddy, it's an honor to have reached as many people as we have.
we are blessed and grateful.
Today, our 50th episode is entitled Reservations and Backdoors, Hidden Ways the Unfaithful Sabotage Recovery. So, James, you have a comment that you're going to open up with. I'm not going to steal it from you, but it's a beautiful statement about the biggest threats to our recovery. So I'd like you to just launch out with that statement today.
Biggest threat to our recovery isn't what we're doing, but what we're secretly holding on to.
Absolutely.
Many of us enter recovery with these hidden exits that are still unlocked. We're not even necessarily aware they're there, but man, they are. And they're back doors that are mental, emotional, behavioral, but they all undermine healing and sabotage relational trust. The biggest problem is we hold on to them and don't even know we're doing it. In the 12-step vernacular, we call it holding reservations. And it's a little different than when we call a restaurant and say, hey, I'd like to make a reservation. It's the same thing, but it's different because sometimes we don't even know we made that call.
And these are lingering doubts, these secret intentions that we're not necessarily bringing out into the light, or even fantasies about returning to old behaviors, something like even euphoric recall, right? Where we
Yeah.
are just regressing to a point where we're almost longing for the old days when things were easier and there wasn't so much pain and hurt. It looks and sounds like I'll kind of give us a chance and stay in this recovery process for now. Or I'm only doing this to keep the peace or avoid consequences because our underlying belief actually, but it's also undermining of the recovery process is if I'm not acting out, things are fine, I'm doing fine, while emotional unavailability and perpetual secrecy still continues. Because we also think that fantasizing or euphoric recall doesn't hurt anybody, right?
Yeah, which of course it does, because it separates us, right? I mean, it disconnects us from our partners and it pulls us into shame because we know we're doing something wrong. And so we go into shame or guilt leading into shame about it. And again, when we're in that space, we're not connectable. Nobody can connect with us. So when we hold on to fantasies about old affairs or idealized sexual encounters, that euphoric recall you were talking about, even if we believe that if things don't improve in our relationship with our partner, that no, then we can go back to that behavior. That's really awful because what it does is it undermines the entire relational recovery to begin with. Sometimes we'll think maybe this relationship isn't right for me anyway. And that's a way to avoid making a full investment in our healing. The big one is comparing our partners to other people. And what we do then is we use that to emotionally check out. Oh, well, she's this or she's that, or will never be this or will never be that, or he, and so on. And if we buy that, then we're again just checking out of it. And those can lead to emotional shutdowns. I mean, you can see emotional shutdowns from other things as well. What those emotional shutdowns do is they mask deeper stuff that's going on, including urges. Sometimes we'll justify, we all know that one. We've gone over
Yep.
that a million times, but justifications like it's not that bad or everyone needs an outlet, those are things that keep us looping in this backdoor slash reservation place so that we always have that kind of, oh, it's okay, really. And it's not. Another reservation, these are mental and emotional, would be lying to ourselves that our urges and triggers are no big deal. Then, because we're lying to ourselves in that way, we're not going to tell anybody. We're not going to tell our sponsor, our coach, our therapist, our mentor, our friend who gets this. But anything has gone through our head and tempted us, if you will. So when we don't do that, it still has power and it'll come back stronger. The key part here, though, is notice who I said to tell: sponsor, mentor, coach, therapist, not your partner. These are things when they go through our heads, we have to handle them as part of our program, but they have to be shared because that is part of the program that we have to have is somebody that we can share this with or they have that power over us.
Because these back doors are behavioral, are they not?
Yeah, when we talk about the reservations, those are more mental and emotional, and the back doors are really behavioral. They're these mindsets essentially that keep a door or an exit cracked open for relapse or dishonesty. Some examples could be when we're using private browsing on our internet browser or secretive browsing habits like reading our iPad when we're on the toilet or concealing our screen or looking at stuff when nobody's around. Within that would be flirting online. That includes chats and such on any space, but also in person. And remember, I've talked about flirting before, and it's really what we call in SLA throwing hooks, right?
Yeah.
Just putting stuff out there. It may not even look like flirting. It could be charm. It could be being nice. It could be any number of things. And because we can't really define it, we really have to put a giant steel door on that one that can't be opened.
That would also mean really high risk behavior like keeping private contact with people from our past affairs or kind of like having a backup plan, what we're talking about. Kind of doing a shoddy half-ass effort, not really blocking or removing social media and apps or otherwise known as digital access points into high risk behavior, secretly looking at stuff on Facebook, but then we have that little voice that says, well, at least I'm not cheating, but we actually are. We're violating our conscience. And our partner, which you've said many times, would probably not sit there and be like, oh, yeah, keep doing this. This is awesome. This makes me feel great about our marriage and about our recovery. Because the bottom line is if you have to keep it a secret, it's not okay. But that also includes lying or omission about boundary violations when in fact there are no minor boundary violations because we have lives and families at stake, right?
Yeah, that's Brilliantly said, because when you say there are no minor boundary violations, remember you can't justify, oh, well, that was just a little thing, or that was a white lie, or no, every boundary violation when we're in relational recovery is a huge violation because it violates trust and safety. And even an incremental violation of that is huge to a betrayed partner because they are in the realm of trauma when it comes to trust and safety. One of the big ones is not committing when we don't commit, which I equate to a refusal, to committing to full disclosure, group work,
Right.
accountability systems, doing the work, right? If we don't commit to that, that's basically saying, no, I'm not going to do that. If we use vague language or half truths to avoid full honesty, vague language confuses our partners. And guess what? It
Yeah.
also confuses us. And what we're secretly doing there is giving ourselves permission to act out. If we don't disclose, again, to somebody, sponsors, coach, therapist, what we call harmless, flirty conversations, emotional connections, and so on, we can't tell the betrayed those directly straight up because we need some guidance, especially early on, from people who have been through this, who know this, who can tell us. We do have to reveal it, but how it's done
Yeah.
so that it's more supportive of a betrayed partner than destructive.
You're absolutely right. It's how we do it and not just dumping and offloading
Right.
onto our betrayed in a way where we feel better. Now they're traumatized and they're in a trauma spiral, but oh boy, we feel better because we have offloaded this big weight that we were carrying,
Yeah.
simultaneously crushing our betrayed once again. Now, as we move into the next section, if you will, what are some examples of relational and psychological backdoors?
These are like a reservation, but it's more in this mental and relational arena. So you'll see how they could kind of fit in both of those sections we were talking about before. Some examples would be secretly blaming your betrayed partner for the betrayal. Well, if she or he hadn't been so cold or distant or unavailable, and so on. Mentally keeping the door open to future romantic or sexual possibilities outside the marriage. This is not quite like the, oh, I'm going to hold on to old contacts. It's more like, well, if stuff doesn't work out, and so on. Holding on to our entitlement beliefs. I deserve something for myself. I'm not
Mm,
getting my needs met here. Well, absolutely, you deserve something for yourself, but not that. You
right.
deserve some self-loving acts that actually, because they're self-loving acts, they're actually relational. So we can't justify, well, I'm just fantasizing and I deserve to have something like that in my life. No, not something that's so destructive. Using emotional shutdown or stonewalling as a power move during conflict. Sometimes we're very reactive and we'll go into an emotional shutdown because we're reactive, but we need to be able to examine that. We may not be able to do it in the moment, but we've got to be able to examine it and say, oh, was I really doing a power move instead there? By going quiet, did I then put my partner back on their heels so that I had the power in that situation because I felt like I didn't have any power?
Right.
Still defining our recovery on our own terms instead of what's needed for relational repair. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That S program says this. They define it this way. My therapist says that. My coach says this. Well, I don't really agree. Maybe some of that's useful, but there's a really bad way to take what you need and leave the rest. Because if we're not in good relational recovery, we're going to leave the wrong stuff. We're going to take the stuff that sounds like it's permissive. So we have to be really cautious about that. Early on, I turned every decision over to my sponsor.
Mm,
I mean, really, I didn't know how to make a good decision to save my life, literally, right? When we resist that deeper emotional work in therapy because it feels too vulnerable, that's also a psychological backdoor. Oh, I'm not going there. No, that's really, I hate that feeling. No, not going to do it. When we feel exposed like that, or that we could be exposed like that, we're shutting down relational recovery and we're opening up one of those back doors.
I think you've said it wonderfully. And I want to take just a moment to say, at some level, there is the truth that these behaviors are not always conscious. They often are in the shadows of our own recovery. They're in our shadow self, if you will, which we aren't really seeing, and we may not be working with someone who's trying to bring that into the light. And also, these behaviors or maladaptive coping mechanisms may masquerade as harmless thoughts, and they might be just the way that he or she has coped with things. So it requires an expert to bring it into the conscious and say, have you ever considered the possibility that what you're doing is actually undermining everything that you say you want to do, and you're actually sabotaging what you say you want to do? I know that you agree with that for sure.
Yes, I do. These unconscious reservations, even those create emotional dissonance and erode that ability to build trust. They certainly take away from any trust that might have been built. And because they're hidden, they're really patterns that are hidden, and they may feel small and justifiable in the moment, but man, they chip away at the integrity of recovery and erode trust in relationship worse than the big ones, because you can see those big ones make serious repair about the big ones. It's those little, it's that attrition, right? It
Yeah.
constantly eats away and erodes it.
Now, this is where we turn up the volume and the heat a little bit. And so let's talk about how these back doors affect the betrayed partner.
I think we can all agree that betrayed partners have a really deep radar for emotional safety, right? I mean, that's kind of a given. It's a premise that we can agree to.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
so they pick up on invisible threats to the extent that the invisible threat, because they're picking up on it, feels like a live, active threat, like it's right in their face. Even if the behaviors have stopped, the mindset says, wait a minute, you're not all in. And so that immediately makes a betrayed partner feel unsafe, unseen, or emotionally abandoned again. I think it also reinforces the betrayal story. Well, wait a minute. Yeah, you're not all in. And you know what? You're still hiding. You're still protecting the behavior more than you're protecting me. And ultimately, that prevents emotional safety for the partner. So the only thing that would give them emotional safety is full transparency and full surrender for reattachment and trust repair to take place.
What we're doing today, it just occurred to me, I wasn't thinking about this, but really, this is such a scalpel like approach. I mean, we're really doing some deep surgery into recovery work. And so, for those of you unfaithful that are watching and listening, if you're not working with someone who is somewhere in the thread of these principles and these ideals, I would just encourage you on behalf of James and I to find someone who has more of a scalpel, because a butter knife is not going to keep you sober. It's not going to prevent relapse. It's not going to heal your relationship. It's not going to heal your family. It's not going to take you where you need to go. It is a scalpel that has to slowly but surely cut without killing you, which has to cut without wounding you. But that scalpel can be confrontational, but it can be kind. It can be redemptive, but it can require some humility. But a butter knife ain't going to do it,
No,
right?
no, not at all. And I'll tell you, this took me a long time to put all this together. A lot of it because I was really pulling even more from my personal experience with this than my psychological knowledge. So I really had to go, all right, what was it like for me back at the beginning here? And I do that a lot. In this case, I really had to look at it. And I wanted to bring this topic because
Yeah,
it really is so unconscious. It took me a lot of really deep work. And thank goodness for my sponsor pointing this out and my supports pointing out a lot of these areas where I was holding reservations and had back doors. And it really took a lot to do that. So for me to go back in my mind and sort of relive this, if you will, and go through it and analyze it, break it down so that we could present it in this way so that people could really hear it. People ask a lot in the comments and in emails, what's your personal experience? Now you're hearing it, even though it's broken down in that scalpel kind of way. Um,
absolutely. So now we transition to how these back doors affect the unfaithful partner. And you hit the nail right on the head. Sometimes it's conscious, sometimes it's buried within the subconscious, and of course, the unconscious. So, talk about the psychological dynamics for the unfaithful.
Okay, so first one is that these reservations or backdoors are most often rooted in fear. So that would be the fear of not coping without the behavior to make us feel better. So by coping, I mean big emotion, difficult things happening. We self-soothe through the acting out. Now the acting out behaviors have been, we put them away, we've stopped them. Now the fear's still there. How do I cope now? And that's part of the reason you really need help to learn how to cope, because there was a reason you picked that early on. And so here we are. This
Yeah.
is why we have to learn how to cope without that type of self soothing. There's this fear that we talked about before: if only you knew me, you wouldn't want to be around me. And that's really, if I can encapsulate that, the fear of being fully known. Because if all people love us for or like us for is what we show to them, then we're not really going to believe we're lovable or likable, because we know we're not showing our full selves, right? That leads to the other fear of not being liked or loved without manipulation. Then we have the myth of control. This is going to be a little bit on the deep side. So, this idea of when we're in fantasy, when we're acting out, when we've got these back doors, when we have these reservations, there's this feeling of being in control. So, I'm in control now. But the fact is, when we're keeping a secret, that means we're still being controlled by the need, the desperate need, I like to call it, for attention, validation, nurture, whatever it is we're trying to fulfill by acting out in the first place. So when we're keeping a secret, that tells us I'm not actually in control. It may feel like control, but it is not control, because we're actually subject to that need that we have to get attention, to be validated, to be nurtured. That's really important to get that. Another way of explaining that or saying it would be: keeping hidden exits feels like control, but it's actually this desperate need in disguise. So that secret belief that I'll only open this door if I have to is proof that the door is still open. Making the choice to eliminate reservations and backdoors actually gives you control of your life and creates more choices for you.
And what we don't understand as unfaithful is that we think that we're getting away with this. We think that we are somehow fine. We're good. Nobody needs to know about this. But the problem is there are what we call emotional consequences to these back doors in the form of guilt, shame, fragmentation, because it's hard to make it all work. It's hard to keep it all together. And we've already proven that we can't keep it all together, but we sure like to try and we sure like to tell ourselves that we are. But it really stagnates us in the entire process. And it just perpetuates compartmentalization, fantasy reliance, and these wonderful ego defenses that have gotten us in trouble in the first place. So, as we navigate through this minefield, what is the solution? What is the answer for the unfaithful and also for the betrayed to look for in the heart of the unfaithful?
So I'm going to say, write this down, because there are several points here, right? So, look, whether you identify as an addict, a compulsive, or not, we have to take on a step one mentality. And that mentality is, we have to surrender to the idea that we cannot control this. We've got to let go of our ego ties to this idea that we can control this particular part of our life. Not saying you can't control any of your life, but this one thing, you keep going back to it. Obviously, it's not in your control. It hasn't worked to date. So that can tell you something, right? We admit the powerlessness over that particular behavior, it's going to help us. There's another piece that we have to admit that we're powerless over, And that is the fantasy we have of returning to it. And that's any kind of fantasy to do with this that enters our head. We can't just allow fantasy to go on because we're powerless over it. What it does is that one little bit, like bacteria, it's going to grow.
And it seduces us. It's just seductive. It
Uh,
just leads us further and further away.
It does. It does. Reeling us in, right? So here's how we do it, man. That first part is really, really vital to the rest of this working. First thing, make a declaration of full commitment. And I mean declaration. You're going to speak your commitment out loud to your partner, to your therapist, to yourself. That's ands in there, not ors. I'm closing every door. No more secrets, no more conditions. I'm all in. Boom. Next thing would be to create a goodbye ritual. One that's often used is write a goodbye letter to the behaviors or fantasy, the way you self soothe. Burn it, bury it, delete it, but you got to do something to mark the shift. You're basically symbolically saying, I'm saying this and I'm putting it into action. The next piece, nobody's going to really like this because nobody likes discomfort. We have to normalize discomfort for now. This isn't going to be easy. Recovery without back doors is going to feel raw and it's going to feel exposed. And that is normal. That's actually a sign that it's real. If you're not feeling that, probably what you're doing isn't sufficient. Remember that avoiding discomfort is what built betrayal in the first place. So instead of numbing, run toward emotional support, group connections, spiritual practices, or embodied calming skills like we've talked about, bilateral motion and hand over heart and tummy. Practice showing up emotionally, even when you're scared, exposed, or unsure. None of that is comfortable. That's hard. So it's not like, oh, yeah, just go do this. It's going to be hard. You're going to be resistant. Key is if you feel resistance, go toward it. Like those army commercials or marine commercials, right? Whereas everybody's running from the big exploding stuff and they're running towards it. That's what we've got to do. There's a way to do this that will be very helpful, and that is if we identify and name what our reservations and backdoors are. That is gonna dismantle the fantasy that we're still in control. If we make this list, we're gonna be like, yeah, I am not in control of that. So when we take a full inventory of what our beliefs, our behaviors, and our just in case mentalities are that we're still holding on to, that's what's going to do it. I broke this down a little bit to help. We have to ask ourselves, one, what behaviors or fantasies am I still holding on to as an option? Two, where am I still keeping secrets and lying? That's directly by omission or to protect our partners, which is really protecting ourselves. Three, what conversations am I avoiding in my coaching, in therapy, or at home? Four, where am I still rationalizing secrecy? Still saying, oh, that's okay. It's just a white lie. It's not a bad thing. Five, what am I not telling my group or partner? So the group of people that are my supports or my partner. It's kind of like the third one, keeping secrets, but there might be things that we can uncover emotionally that we're not talking about that we haven't necessarily kept secret, but oh wow, if we examine it, there it is. And lastly, under this list, what part of me still wants an escape if this gets too hard? That one, by the way, you might be able to identify one or two places initially, and then a little farther down the road, you're going to be going, oh, wow, there's another one. So those questions will include things like saving contact info from past affairs, secretly blaming your partner for your choices, minimizing emotional affairs or pornography use. Those are still cheating. Keeping a fantasy life that contradicts your recovery. If you hold on to even a little bit of that, it's included in this. Remember, if it feels like a just in case or nobody will know, that's a reservation.
So, how can the unfaithful take action if they come away from today's podcast with, okay, well, what do I do? Well, we've already given them a ton of stuff, but
Mhm.
nail it down for them in no uncertain terms. And these are for the betrayed to look for in the life of the unfaithful as well.
This is not a complete list, and some of it people are already doing, and that's fine. It's good to go over this sometimes. Eliminate or delete all of the things that you can that had anything to do with acting out, contacts, apps, and so on. Use internet blocking apps. There's some good ones out there. There are some that are specifically for pornography. There's some that are much broader than that. Set one of those up. Helps you. It's a tool. Avoid the people, places, and things that could get you into trouble. People who don't know about this are dangerous for you, right? People who have the attitudes that'll just get you into trouble. Places where you acted out, or, okay, there's a bar. I may not have acted out there, but drinking takes me into a bad place. It lowers my
Yeah.
inhibitions and I might do something stupid. Any triggering items in the house, in your car, at the office, anything that kind of makes you go, oh, that would be nice to fantasize or whatever, throw it away or burn it as a symbolic moving on. Go to your phone, remove stored numbers, deactivate any burner or false email accounts, block triggering apps, share your passwords, all of them, with a recovery partner or a therapist. Obviously, I'm a big proponent of having open access to our partners. I'm talking about adding somebody in who also has those passwords. Here's a huge one. End ambiguous or overly personal relationships, even if you don't think that they are emotional affairs. If they're ambiguous or overly personal, you don't know. Trust me on this, you don't know. So if in doubt, they're out.
Yeah. Well said.
Journal or write that letter of farewell to any fantasy that comes up. That whole thing about writing it and burning it, you can do that for anything that pops up in your head that you go, oh, wow. You identify that as something that isn't good for you. Write it down, burn it, get rid of it. It's that symbolic piece. Our brains love symbology. And then lastly, tell someone, a helping professional or sponsor or mentor, about every hidden area that you can think of and that comes up for you, that pops into your brain in the future, especially the ones that feel small or stupid that you would normally discount. Don't discount them because it's those little ones that build up, man, and they have the power. So tell someone who is helping you about every single one of those.
So, how does the unfaithful rewire the internal exit strategy?
Here are some journal prompts. What do I still believe this behavior gives me that I can't get elsewhere? See what we're doing? We're looking at it deeply. What is this behavior going to get me? What do I tell myself? No matter how ridiculous it seems when exposed to the light of day, write it down anyway so that you know that is a problem. If you just think it, you'll probably not remember it. We need to remember this stuff so that we don't do it again. Next prompt. What do I fear will happen if I fully let go of this? We hold on to stuff out of fear, right?
Yeah.
Because, man, then what? But what do I do if I can't soothe myself this way? So, what do I fear? Ask deeply, consider it. Both of those require reflection. Personally, I find that reflection can often happen if I'm just writing, write, and then boom, something gets written on the page that I'm like, wow, where'd that come from? And that's often the answer for me. Here's an interesting one that not a ton of people talk about, but you have to grieve this false sense of power, identity, or comfort that we feel like or think the behavior gave us. We have to be able to grieve that because if we don't, then all we're doing is trying to push it out with the positive. Then we get into that toxic positivity that you talked about, where we're just doing that so much, and yet it's still there. Why is it still there? So we actually have to go, okay, that actually gave me something, some kind of relief. It was unhealthy, and I get that. And it did what it did, but now I'm going to find something else. So that you're going through a grief process with that. Warning, don't hold on to it. That is not what grief is. Grief is a process of letting go. It is not a, I'm going to hold on to that forever until it dissipates on its own. That's not going to happen. In that, you're also going to affirm that your new healthy ways are going to create real empowerment, your real identity, and there's comfort in that itself. The next piece would be to ritualize your commitment. What you're going to do is make that, a big commitment I said at the beginning. Now you're going to
Right.
verbally affirm that every day. I love mirror work. You can write it in a daily journal. Just make sure you do it daily. I'm fully in with no reservations. I like to create daily recovery rituals. I read a little bit. There's a daily reader that I read. You can read other recovery books. I've got one back there sitting on that little table that I read. Prayer, meditation, making a list of things you're grateful for each day. Doesn't have to be like 100 things. It can be three. And then that 10th of 10 that I talk about, that's that 10th step of basically I'm going to examine my day and see if there's anywhere where I need to make an amends, including to my higher self or my better self. I really damaged myself there so that we can make those amends to ourselves, to our partners, to anybody else that we might have hurt. We don't actually have to have hurt them. They can say, "What are you telling me that for?" This is to make things right in ourselves. And if it has the effect of making it right with the other person, that's all the much better.
So today, as we leave them with some marching orders, what are some final thoughts that you would leave in both the unfaithful and the betrayed?
I think one of them is often this can feel like we're being punished, like we're being made to write the same line 100 times over by the teacher. I had to do that a lot, by the way. It's not about punishment, it's about freedom. The energy that we have spent and spend managing all of these reservations and backdoors is enormous. And when we use that to rebuild safety and trust, it opens up a whole new possibility for life. Also, remember that full surrender is where peace begins. If we're holding on to stuff, we can't really be at peace. We can't be balanced. We can't recover with one foot still in those past beliefs, actions, or defensive strategies. Within that, we got to realize that what we're holding on to is the very thing that's keeping us from healing. True healing starts when the unfaithful partner can identify, name, and eliminate all those exit strategies and commit fully to that path of transparency, humility, and relational safety.
And we hope that all of you come away with the belief that this can happen. And these are metrics that you can use to really make progress. If a lot of these principles are foreign to you, it might be time to really ask yourself if you're working with an expert, or maybe you have been working with an expert, but you haven't been hearing it. Maybe today has hit you square between the eyes and you really need to reevaluate where your heart's at. We are honored that you tune in to be with us. We are so incredibly honored to do the work that we do. If we can be of any service, or if you want to know how to maybe attend an intensive with James and Sharon, maybe what you've heard about today makes you think, maybe what we're doing weekly sessions or bi-weekly sessions isn't working, and maybe it's time to consider an intensive. Well, if that's the case, you can reach out to us at asktheunfaithful@gmail.com. We do our best to answer our own emails, even still, while we are rock stars with 50 episodes. Just kidding, we're not rock stars, but we do have 50 episodes as of today, and we're thrilled out of our mind, and I wore a tie. So if we can help, by all means, reach out to us, and we'll see you next time on Ask the Unfaithful.